So good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Blake Bradford. It's great to see y'all. So we are in the home stretch, right? I know y'all are. Y'all been through some amazing speakers. Golly, that last session was simply just heart-filling, amazing. Your heads are full of information. You're already planning your trip, and so you came here. So, yeah, we'll make it work. So, but I do want to thank you so much for continuing to work in your team. I was listening in to some of the sessions in the crew meetings. They were really working. What's our next step? And actually, that's next step language is language I've been using well, and you'll see on some of this. So today's topic for this session is aligning leadership for growth. Aligning leadership for growth. And when I want to begin with talking about alignment, the idea behind that is trying to figure out how to get a lot of resources, people, the processes, the plans, everything moving in the same direction. And we're going to be digging into that today. So first of all, some of you that have been in my workshops before, I do have all my slides online, and including and some links and things like that. So you can download those slides and look at them if you want to on your phone, whatever if it's helpful. So you know you don't have to write everything that I say or feel like I was just in there in Kinsling taking pictures of the screen, the whole thing like I do because I go to conferences and love them. So, but that information is there. Also, I'll be pulling a little bit from both Impact and Mission Possible here and there, but also some stuff that's outside of both. So just understand that. So I want to begin talking about alignment, about a gigantic failure of alignment on my part as a pastor. And so, start with how we mess up, right? Work in the negative. So here's the situation. I was appointed to a church that right before I showed up, the church burned down. Actually, it wasn't the whole church. It was just the old, gorgeous 1904 built sanctuary burned down. And that church had actually been thinking about its future, and I was going in as an associate pastor. They were rethinking what it meant. They had done some reorganization of their structure, of governance and leadership. They were in a moment of trying to figure out what it was going to be and what their identity and their purpose was going to be as a church. And then the fire happened. And looking back on it, I've said, we should have never hired an architect. We should have hired a grief counselor. Because the building committee was voted on within a week. The insurance company was sued to get $6 million, which is what we thought that they owed us. And we began process for raising money and ended up raising another $3 million. So $9 million, which is a little bit of money. Now, you would think, okay, we're in this time of assessing our future. We'd already been in that. We lost this anchor. An anchor I use as a language that can work both ways. An anchor of faith or an anchor holding you back. And I remember sitting in a meeting with one of the key leaders, and he was saying, we're going to be visiting around and looking at 21st century buildings. And it was like, cool. And then we built our building. That's what they built. That's what they built. That is a historical replica of a 1904 building. We took the old building plans. I remember sitting in the building committee, and they said, well, we can't do that. There's a wall there. And the architect said, well, we're just working on digital here. And I actually said, there's no wall. Because it wasn't being built. It was only on the plans. It burned to the ground. There was no wall. The wall was only in their memories. They built a historical replica. All that alignment work disappeared in this back to Egypt moment. They retreated back out of alignment into what was comfortable, literally The pews that they used to have, that they had photos of, they wanted rebuilt. Exactly. $9 million on a quarter of a block. So I think about that a lot as a leadership failure. As part of the pastoral team, we should have paid better attention. And it was and the emotions and energy was moving faster than our alignment. And I also saw that not as a leadership failure, I saw it as a stewardship failure, because we spent $9 million, and even more important, we wasted an opportunity that had been given us to turn into a God moment. I'm not saying God burned down the sanctuary. I said it was an opportunity to use for a God moment. So when I talk about alignment, what I'm talking about, alignment is an act of stewardship. Alignment's an act of stewardship. And a lack of alignment then is wasting God's tithe. Wasting God's tithe. And I think what happens when you mess up and you mess around with God's stuff? Well, as some of y'all have heard in my other things, I'm a big fan of the book of Acts. And I remember Ananias and Sapphira. It did not go well. It did not go well. The other thing about alignment, I think, is alignment is about unity, not uniformity. So that's the other piece I want to say. Because oftentimes we talk about alignment, I think we move into micromanagement. And I think, give me how many lay folks here? Okay. How many pastors? Okay. Thank you. That helps me kind of feel. So I think, and it certainly is clergy, and maybe it's just me, you can tell me, I get worried, and then I want to micromanage. And because I try to keep I tell myself not to, but alignment becomes micromanagement. Instead of trying to move all in the same direction, it's like you need to follow in my footsteps. And that's not going to get us there, is it? It's not. I think we just heard Ken talk about releasing others. But you notice he was releasing others, but all to go the same direction. So we all take our own path, but we're all going to land in the same promised land together. So that's some key points about alignment, just kind of structure. So here's how the rest of this presentation is going to go. When I think about alignment, the next piece is it's about a clarity of purpose. That's how you have to, that's the top frame, the roof, that's the foundation, that's the whole container, is a clarity of purpose. And then alignment of plans, processes, and people. And when I'm trying to create an alignment that's based on unity, not uniformity, then the plans, the processes, and the people are the three ways that kind of alignment can be produced. So let me break that down. First of all, clarity of purpose and plans. One of our pastors in the Arkansas conference shared something that I thought was real helpful. And when I went to my doctorate of ministry stuff at SMU, Bill Bryan, the professor there, actually quoted our Arkansas pastor and into what is church leadership. And I love this. Leadership is connecting a people to a purpose and a purpose to a plan. Isn't that cool? People to a purpose and a purpose to a plan. Alignment is about this clarity of purpose. It's about guiding people along the way. And what happens, of course, for us, like we did when that church burned down, we forgot the vision that we were creating. And so let me have some examples. Many businesses go out of business because they forgot what business they're in. So up there, railroad industry got to think of themselves as we are in the railroad industry. We are in the track building, station stop, railroad business. They forgot they were in the transportation of people and goods business. So when the arrival of trucking first happened, real cross-country trucking and regional trucking, they were behind. And in America, we still move a lot of stuff by rail, but I mean, I live in Arkansas. Golly, all I see are 18-wheelers. That could have been a railroad industry thing. They gave up the space, the market space for trucking. They could have been the leaders in transportation. Western Union turned down the rights to the telephone because they forgot they were in the communication business. They thought they were in the telegraph business. And you have these cablegrams. And we don't need that telephone stuff. They missed out. They missed out. The last one up there is quartz technology. The Swiss watchmaker that invented quartz technology could not get a single Swiss company to look at the quartz technology because they all imagined themselves as in the small precision mechanics industry. You know, what are you talking about? We deal with small mechanical gears. What do you bring in this quartz digital stuff? And then a little known tiny company called Seiko picked up the patent for quartz technology. And instead of being in precision moving parts, Seiko understood they were in the clock making business. Seiko took off. How many Swiss watches have you bought lately? When we as a church talk about aligning leadership, the point in that is never leadership is enacted to itself, but leadership to make disciples to transform the world. So that's where our churches, that's the business our churches are in. And whenever folks say, well, we need to treat church like a business, I never disagree. I'm a superintendent. I'm used to folks saying that, well, you pastors don't get it. And often we don't, and that's true, but I never compete with saying that, oh, treat church like a business. Yep, but we need to remember what business the church is in. And it's not about making a profit, it's about making disciples. And so alignment's about bringing clarity and resources around this purpose, around a vision that, and I love this, it's a Lovett Weems phrase, that makes our mouth water. When's the last time you had a vision that made your mouth water? I was doing all this travel, and I missed a meal during all the travel to get here. And Keiko Tan and I, we made it to dinner finally. And we ordered some good food. I actually ordered because I was in Pennsylvania, and I know it's not Philadelphia, but I ordered a Philly cheesesteak because I was close enough, right? Now, she ordered something that resembled Mexican food, and I told her, I'm sorry, I don't eat Mexican food above the Mason-Dixon line. That's not going to happen. It's already bad enough that, no. But I ordered, and it came out. By the time it came out, and there was the cheese and the meat, and all, my mouth was just watering. When's the last time your mouth watered for ministry? When's the last time your mouth watered for ministry? And if it hasn't lately, you got a bigger problem than alignment, first of all. Because you're never going to get alignment that's real around something that doesn't come of God. If it's going to be alignment for alignment's sake, that's management. And I know we churches do management extremely well. We have managed ourselves into consecutive decades of failure. But I think if you're talking about real leadership around a mouth-watering vision, that's why we do alignment. That's the real reason there. So Moses shared this to us back in Deuteronomy, some of his last words about staying on purpose. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, and to keep his commands, decrees, and laws. Now, he's like, I got these two futures are in front of you, right? Now choose life so that you and your children may live. I think when you have a clarity of purpose that is a choose life size, choose Christ, choose transforming the world for Jesus, that will make folks' mouth water. That's the kind of alignment you can create clarity and purpose around. That then, when it comes time to do the difficult work of saying no to things, people understand your why. People get it because you've already drawn this picture of a promised land that's going to be a whole lot bigger than whatever management or relational issue that you need to get through or manage yourself through. So the first piece of this, as I said, alignments was plans and processes. So alignments of plans. I'll give a good example, and I'll start with the calendar. I remember the most frustrating staff meeting I've ever attended. I shared with everyone, please bring your framed out plans for the next semester, basically. And we're going to talk about them in staff. And we had been, I thought I'd been a good leader, and we'd already kind of, got the trajectory and everything. And one of the folks, God bless her, she brought her list to hand out in draft form. Cool. I love drafts. Let's work it. But the problem was the draft form I got. I saw there's a list of events on the sheet of paper that had been photocopied for us, and next to it were some dates. And those dates had been scratched out, and new dates. And then there was another set of dates that would have been written, and they had been scratched out, and another set of dates. She'd been using the same event calendar for at least 3 years, and just scratching out and putting in the new dates. And I get there, and I'm like, that's not planning, that's photocopying. How is that fitting into our big mission? How is that fitting into our vision that we're trying to describe? How's that getting us to the promise? I didn't say all this. It was like rotating in my head while my ears were getting red and thinking, oh golly, planning by photocopy. In a church culture where we do ministries just because, just because it sounds charitable, we don't want to be mean, just because Miss Matriarch wants us to, or just because we've always done it that way. Pastor, why are you against the puppy ministry? Don't you love puppies? Well, no, I kick puppies every day. Yeah, of course I love puppies, so we'll have the puppy ministry. Is it fit into our? No, but they want the puppy ministry. You get the idea. We do it just because. In a world like that, accountable leadership really feels radical. It really does feel radical, doesn't it? Because that just because language is the way we've been running our ministries for such a long time. Rarely do we create ministries with mission impact framed out in mind, and rarely do we say no to ministries because we have missional impact in mind. So, the first piece, calendar. The second piece I'd talk about here, alignment of plans, is the budget. Because the budget is a plan. It's a spending plan. Y'all imagine your budgets right now. I bet you can, if you don't know anything else about the church you're serving, I bet you can look at that budget and you will know exactly the priorities of the congregation. Now, I don't want to just include the so-called consumables. When I think of budget, I don't actually like to have the staff part of the budget stuck in this staffing section. I like to insert that in the ministry pieces. So youth ministry includes the cost of a youth minister, if that's your staff. Does that make sense? Worship include that stuff because we are a incarnational people and ministry is incarnational, so that stuff is included in those so-called departments. But I think you can learn a lot. Look at your budgets. Is it aligned around your purpose? Is it aligned around or I can say, if your only purpose is survival, maybe it's aligned around that. Is your only purpose making everybody happy or comfortable? You'll tell pretty quick if it's aligned around that. Is it aligned around guests? Is it aligned around making new disciples? All that should be pretty obvious looking at your budgets. The budget should, of course, be a result of the needs identified to fulfill the trajectory, the purpose of the church. Instead, we let budgets drive the church. And usually we do it by the same planning by photocopy as that youth minister did. We take the old numbers, we might give a few folks a raise, we might drop a thing down $100 or $200, and that's our budget. And we want it that way, and we say we want to next year, as we're looking at the budget, we want to be able to see the variances from last year. right? And that, haven't you heard that statement? We want to be able to compare this year and last year's variances, and we'll tell how we're on budget. And I want to say, do you mean we're never going to do anything new? We're never going to say goodbye to things that aren't working? That's stating right there we're not going to be in alignment. So what would happen instead? What if budgets were created from scratch based around your purpose as a church? Imagine that. Imagine that. Now, after a while, that'll start making your mouth water. Do that for a few years. You start imagining big things. The next piece I'll talk about is processes here. And so some of you heard one story earlier. Miriam. I love the prophetess Miriam. And Miriam is the perfect example of leadership in that she was a planner and a prophet. She knew how to get folks on board. And she knew personally how to do some of that. You can see that by the way she connected the princess of Egypt and to her mother when the baby in the basket and all that, right? That's connecting ministry if there ever was one. That's team building. And then the other piece, which I just adore, is when the Hebrew nation crosses the Red Sea, Moses does his song, Miriam starts dancing. She pulls out a tambourine and she starts dancing. And then in the next scripture says, all the women pulled out their tambourines and the children, they start dancing. And I thought, how'd they know to pack their tambourines? I mean, think about that for a second. You have to pack everything you own to leave slavery and start life in a new place. Now, preacher that's moved, they didn't get U-Hauls, right? They had to carry it or maybe, grab a goat or something. They had to carry that, and they packed tambourines. So in my homiletical imagination, I picture Miriam going to the leaders of the families in the households and saying, now, y'all remember to pack your tambourines. Right? Can you imagine her going to the other women and saying, pack your tambourines because we will be celebrating in freedom. Wow, huh? And then when the moment came, she pulled out her tambourine. All the others said, boom, that's what we've been waiting for. And they pulled out their tambourines and they all praised God. Planning means preparing now, packing your tambourine now for what God's got for you. It means sharing with others that kind of promised land vision that makes them want to actually carry a tambourine in the bag. See, I'm tying back earlier. I mean, that's that mouth-watering vision, isn't it? They had to pack their tambourines. That took foresight, that took planning, that took encouragement, and that took someone willing to describe a promised land that no one could have imagined for the last 400 years. Why do we think God has stopped giving that kind of vision? I bet there are Miriams right here in this room that God have given a vision for your faith community. Have you been sharing with folks it's time to pack the tambourine? So that's one process. Another process I want to talk about is, and this is one of my Blake Bradford normal flowchart structural things that you kind of I stick as many maps as I love flowcharts. Color coded, all the better. So impact focused, accountable leadership. There's a question I have often about how we go about working through stuff as teams. How do we work through ideas? How do we help people understand that the stuff that we do, the ministries that we create, need to be held accountable to a larger vision? And so this is one of the tools I have for teams that I encourage, and this is a tool that you could use at your governing board, your small ministry team, staff. It's a generic tool that you can take and utilize. And it's very simple, as you can tell. You have a purpose, a vision, an impact size, a God-sized vision, whatever you want to describe, the why. Do some discernment and research. Is this really fit in with what our purpose is? Is this really a need of the community? Do we need to run the mission insight stats to make sure we're doing something that's really needed or not just something we think the world needs? Some of you may have gone to that mission insight training. And then, of course, the next one is plan and set some goals. Notice I didn't say go straight and do. We are a Martha people. We love just go do stuff. And we don't do enough Mary time of sitting with Jesus and listening. So after discernment, after your research, plan, set some goals. What does success look like? What does fruitfulness look like? If we're going to be doing a bridge event that's designed to reach out in the community, how are we going to set up our teams so that, for instance, for every person we have in the bridge event, connecting with people, doing the event, doing the trunk or treat, we have the same number of people already scheduled, ready to go, with a script in hand on how to do follow-up the next day. Those are the kind of setting plans. Implement the ministry for impact, and then immediately as part of the system, evaluate the event. And notice I say evaluate the event, the ministry. What kind of fruitfulness did we have? And I separated evaluation from reflection. And it may be a different team even, but if you can imagine with me, we can evaluate something. We can say if we did it well. It takes a little bit more reflection and willingness to learn to see not if we did it well or not, but if it was the right thing God needed us to do. Because it'd be real easy to say we did this well and then to add in, oh, here's how we need to fix it for next time, and never get to the bigger, more balcony kind of question of, is that something God's really calling us to do? Did it fit into our big why, our big vision, that promised land image we had? And so that's more of a larger assessment. So that might be something that even the board does in conjunction with that ministry team, and start asking some of those why questions.
Can I ask a quick question?
Super.
How do you define ministry impact in contrast to fruitful impact?
I separating implement and evaluate.
Okay.
And I could really use fruitful. And the difference there is to implement, to actually do the ministry, it's a ministry with impact.
Okay.
And of course, the difference there is a ministry just because.
Okay.
Those kind of just because ministries, or ministries to make us comfortable. I'm talking about ministries that make a real impact in whatever flavor of whatever goals we set. So that's essentially doing the ministry and then gauging fruitfulness. I think that's stepping back, looking at our harvest and how we did on it. Thank you. Great question.
Can I stop you?
You bet. You bet.
These aren't all different groups. This is one group.
This is one group working a process. Now, it could be you have some partners.
Right.
I mean, you'll have partners do the implementation, partners maybe to help us look. But I think this is a process. If you can imagine this process being done with every ministry that you do. And here's why. Folks are bad. We're bad at accountability, right? It's kind of weird. We don't know. If any of you ever tried to do an evaluation of an event with the team, their heart's on their sleeve a little bit. We want to be pastoral and nice. And it's hard to get past the line of actually evaluating. And so, if you build into all your ministries, we got to run the cycle on it. They know evaluation's coming. It's just part of it. The military does a version of this called after-action reports. With everything done, immediately there's an after-action report. And it could all be thumbs up, but we're still going to do an after-action report. There has to be some sort of breakdown with the team, and then learning. So that's the opportunity to build it into the system so it's an expected part. It's not like you're picking on me, because I know we get that some. No, it's our system. It's our process to maintain and to encourage accountable alignment as in a church. Because remember, all the resources and the time, these are all God's. And to be good stewards, we need to keep track of God's resources. And remember, we're resources of God's too, because we're God's disciples. We're instruments of His peace and grace. Now, here's a piece here, and I've got my air sickness bag. So I've been flying a lot lately, and I've grabbed an air sickness bag. So I've got my air sickness bag. So here's the question. Thinking about that kind of system. When I was coaching congregations, back when I was an honest church developer and not a district superintendent, went to the dark side and all that. A question I often ask to determine how committed the leadership is or to accountability and to alignment is to ask, tell me about the last few ministries you intentionally shut down. Ooh. I don't know how many times I've heard, well, and they kind of look out in far space. And so here's the kind of follow-up thing. When's the last time you sat around the table as leaders and had a decision to make that was missional? That you had one of those, like you remember I said Moses, choose life moments. Here's 2 opportunities, and one of them is huge. It's the promised land. One of us makes us comfortable. And you have that decision, and the fact that you're even trying to make that decision makes you a little queasy. Your little tummy hurts. I don't know if we want to deal with this. When's the last time you had to pull out the air sickness bags at a meeting? That you are making God-sized decisions in your community. Because if you aren't making any God-sized communities, that means you're probably not asking tough questions. You're asking easy questions to get easy answers. So I guess my challenge to you is pull out the air sickness bags. I said to one church, I said, what would happen? I used to have a bunch of these. I don't know where they all went. I had to grab one on the plane today, this week. I said, put one of these on your table just to say, are we a little queasy yet? Are we a little queasy yet? And just imagine what could happen. Let's take the example of ministry shut down. Congregations, we clutter up our calendars with busy work. I knew one pastor. His goal was to fill every day on the calendar with at least 4 or 5 items so he could print that on the bulletin. And then they would take that bulletin and mail it to me as the superintendent to show off how busy they were. Because we're busy. We're so very busy. Now, they weren't growing as a church. They weren't making new disciples. They sure weren't transforming the world, but they were very busy. And I think, until church leaders are willing to make the hard call, conduct some funeral services for some ministries that are worn out or distracting us, to be better stewards and aligners of the vision, well, alignment and accountability is always going to be theoretical. So that's a process for challenging questions, for building in challenging questions to see how things are going in the life of the church. And looking for decisions that, might make us a little queasy. So I'd like you to pair and share here. So what I want you to do before you pair and share, write down real quick one next step that you can make to create alignment of processes and plans. So just one tweak, one step, one big transformative step, whatever God's calling you right now to create more alignment. And so calendaring, budgeting, processes of accountable leadership, some piece like that, maybe some other change. Well, what's one next step you can do to create closer alignment to your purpose? So write it down real quick and make it one sentence. Let's not get into, us pastors are horrible at this. We move into paragraphs. One sentence. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 1 minute to share with your neighbors, so each of you get 30 seconds. So have you got your idea yet? One thing you can do, one next step. Okay, let me pull up my timer and you discover your neighbor. And let's see, are you ready? 1, go.
go with that.
You should have switched by now. You should have switched by now. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. It sounds like everybody here's got a next step. This isn't that hard, is it? There is always one more next step you can do to get that closer to that alignment. What were some of your answers? How many had something about calendaring? Calendaring processes? How about budgeting processes and thinking about how you do your budget? Look, asking the card question. How about that accountable leadership cycle? And that for a few of you, I see a nod or two. What was one other thing? Just give me a one or two. Yes, Damien.
We're redefining our purpose.
Getting that purpose clear.
You can't align anything until we have the purpose.
You can't. No, you can't. That's awesome. Great.
Now before that, I said I gotta find that core group of people.
Oh, okay.
Because we're gonna determine purpose, we gotta have that core.
Okay. Yes.
Aligning our lay servant, lay speaker, lay pastor,
Uh-huh.
so it fits better.
Gotcha. Okay. We're going to talk about people in a second. That's the next piece. Thank you. Yes.
We're working on a narrative budget so that
Oh,
we can
yeah.
start creating some accountability.
Those are great. Awesome. Narrative budgets. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so the next piece is aligning people. And the first way I want to share about that is actually stealing from General Stanley McChrystal. You know, he went to Iraq, and they discovered that apparently our whole system of doing war that was designed for the Cold War and lots of tanks was a complete failure in Iraq. And so they rethought how they did leadership in the military. Now, there is a bureaucracy that is actually more tangled and excruciating than the United Methodist Church. And that is the United States military. And they are very clear about hierarchies, right? I mean, you know, you actually salute, literally, to officers. But even within that, they were saying, we need to change up some stuff. So what they started doing is, and I don't know if you can see there's this hierarchical command structure. They moved to commanding a whole bunch of very flexible, independent teams. They put liaisons on every other team so they could connect and to create more of an environment. They changed the wording around leader to go from commander to really a gardener, where the head general there was a gardener who was pruning and giving fertilizer and sunlight to what needed it out in the field, and got to the point where it went from command to a team of teams. And so all these interrelations, all for an attempt of, we have a clear purpose. We don't have to have uniformity of everything because every situation's a little different. Every team has different capabilities. And we're going to stay connected, but even within that, we're all going to be moving the same direction, but we're not going to be lockstep. I'll give you an example around this using the church metaphor, and it actually is a metaphor that Kay and I shared in Mission Possible. I've got it's a bit of a parable. Imagine, if you would, a family that's highly active in the church. They have a vision. God's put it on their heart to have an Easter egg hunt that the community is invited, and it be designed to be a bridge event. They want to get the names and do great follow-up and bless the kids and connect the neighborhood and do advertising. You get the idea. And so around Christmas time, and she gets this idea, and the family's thinking about it. And yeah, we'd like to head this up. And so in January, they talk to the pastor and say, oh, okay, well, we have to go to you're wanting to use the big lawn in front of the church. That's a trustee thing. Okay, go to the trustees, Meet with the trustees. Oh, yeah, you can do that. But, this also needs the finance committee. Oh, okay. And so go to the finance. Oh, well, we need, you want to use some staff? We better talk to staff parish. Okay. So by the time everyone approves of the Easter egg hunt, it's July. Been there? You can tell I've done church work. So with more of a team, instead of doing the highly structured command system, what would happen if you have some basic levels of authority given? You have maybe a single board that can make decisions if they have to. If not, you have some guiding principles. You have some flexibility there. You see, does it conflict with anything we're doing? How does it fit into our greater mission? And then it's a say yes culture. It's a say yes culture. You can kind of see how you can build teams, interrelate to the others. You don't have to break all of the rules. It's just a question of, can the relationships between governing and ministry change so that ministry can actually be unleashed? And the term around some of this is, I like this term, shared consciousness. And that's one of the words used in Stanley McChrystal's book. And the idea there is to help encourage more folks to follow this sort of freedom. They used to have, in the military, you'd have the general and lieutenant, and they'd have them on a video conference, like this. And they might have about, 10, 15 people in the room. They go, oh, yes, General. And they take the notes, and they'll take them back, and they'll do the thing. Good command structure. They started opening it up. So now there's thousands of people who logged in on a daily basis. And there was a set couple of questions, and they would ask the general, and the general or the major, whoever, they would be going through the issue live. They'd be thinking through the problem, using the larger trajectory, using the larger plan and the why under it all. And what that allowed, even the second lieutenant right out of West Point could watch the general live think through a process and ask questions and give approvals. And then that lieutenant, when they're faced with maybe a similar situation, they were able to say with pretty good confidence, because there's a shared conscience, a shared understanding of, well, here's how I watched the general go through something like this. So to apply those same things the general did, here's what I'm going to say. And that was the way to do it. And so by watching the senior leader go through a process, everyone else was able to work their own process, all in alignment, but without having to send every request up the chain and back the chain of command. So with the idea behind that shared consciousness, once you have everyone in the organization, in this case the church, working through things together, you're watching the processes, you're transparent about your processes, you have things like that accountability wheel. This is how we think through things here. I think Ken's process, he taught them about the 5C leaders. That's a perfect example of creating a shared consciousness. They really created a culture out of this. Everyone in that church knows what kind of leadership group. That means Ken doesn't have to be involved in every selection of every leader, because every leader there knows what to look for in other leaders. The shared consciousness system is working. So the first piece on alignment is how do you build teams? The second is staffing. Now, I'm also asked, how much staff to have, and that's a great question. And I got some stats we could look at, but the real question is, what do you want to do with the staff? Because I think what we often want to do is we want to purchase a lot of staff. I'm going to use a purchase language. We want to build a staff, and they're going to do the ministry. And we don't really think about the fact that sooner or later that's going to fail. First of all, it's going to fail because it's not biblical. It's not biblical. Biblical means that ministry is shared. It's a part of what disciples do. We do not want to hire a bunch of staff to be professional doers of ministry. What we really need is we need equippers and coordinators of ministry. So, for instance, let's do alignment. If disciple making is the mission, then staff, if they're doers of ministry and not equippers, they're actually working against the alignment of our ministry. Because now what you've allowed to happen is you've had staff now steal ministry away from the laity. You've hired them to do it. You're actually working against your whole vision and your trajectory as a church by hiring out people to do ministry for you. So what instead would be if you had a whole bunch of equippers and everyone's job is to, on that staff then, is not to do the ministry, but to find, to encourage, to equip others to grow in ministry. And you build the ministry like that. Because, let's be honest, you never can hire enough doers. It's going to give out on your budget, right? Oh, because someone's going to need, we need someone with the children because, teenagers drive the pastor nuts. Oh, okay, so we'll hire somebody. Oh, we need someone, pastoral care, well, let's hire somebody. Oh, we need someone that needs more adult education. Well, let's hire it out. Let's hire it out. Let's hire it out. Let's get another staff member. And by the time you're done, you have a pastor, all they do is supervise staff, and you don't have any disciples growing in their own faith because they've never had to teach Scripture. And if you think I'm nuts here, at one of my churches, God bless them, I had a delegation come to the office. And it was a lovely delegation of a couple of young parents. And they came to the office. And they sat down and they said, so we don't like the way we're doing Sunday school. And I'm like, well, I don't like the way we're doing Sunday school either. First of all, we call it Sunday school, and that kind of sucks. But I didn't say all that. I just said, yes, I wish we moved more to a small group system. But sure, hit me. What you got? Well, we would like to hire our Sunday school teachers. It's like, you're kidding, right? Yeah, for children, we want to hire out Sunday school leaders. And I was like, man, this is a church, they have more money than smarts. And so we kind of undug in, and I discovered the problem, because I already kind of knew the problem, but the issue was because we had not been equipping and training disciples for, like 30 years. And when we had a whole system built in that the only people who did children's ministry were parents of children. Only people who did nursery ministry were parents of nursery workers. Okay, at that time, I had a child in Sunday school, elementary. I've got a few gifts of ministry, but I know I can't do a few things. You don't want me singing in the choir, and you don't want me trying to lead children's or youth ministry. I'm really bad at it. That is not my giftedness. I'm also kind of low on the mercy scale, so I'm probably not a pastor of visitation. I'll just be honest about that too. So, but what we did was we put people in positions they were not gifted or equipped for. And it wasn't working, and it was failing, and everyone knew it, but no one would hold each other accountable to that. Meanwhile, we weren't training up the next generation nor the next, and we had to go backwards and tell the baby boomers, you need to get your behinds. If you're called to children's ministry, you did not retire when your kids graduated, you need to get your behind back and help out. And boy, they loved me for that one. But it's really true, because they're a giftedness and they were not being stewards of God's gifts. That means they're stealing from God. I told you, mercy is not one of my gifts. I just call them thieves. Now, you want to help? Yeah. So staff meetings are another opportunity for alignment. We do staff meetings horribly. We think if we get together and we have a staff meeting, we go over the calendar every month, we will now be aligned. That's not true. That's never been true. I've shifted staff meetings. First of all, I stopped having all staff meetings except for once a month when I was serving a large church. And that was more for large group building and a little bit of the vision setting pieces. I worked the rest of what you would call staff meeting times on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. I did them with small teams We may have youth and children ministry, or music youth and discipleship youth kind of together, because apparently they can't talk to each other without someone like writing hurt on them in that church I served. Do y'all have that problem too? We have the music staff and the youth director, and I thought they're all youth directors because, yeah, some of them play music and some don't. But anyway, apparently there's, they cross-scheduled against each other, stuff like that. But I did the small team model. And I also started doing staff meetings where I would ask questions. I wrote the questions on the agenda. Every agenda item, instead of writing the fall festival, I wrote the question. I might have 5 questions about the fall festival. So it was a question-based agenda that all the things were leading right back into the alignment. One of the last pieces here is on people, aligning people's governance. Y'all, if y'all went to Kay's session, you heard about simplified structure governance, where if you can have your trustees is your staff parish, which is your finance committee, which is your church council, 9 people, 1 committee. Works great. It keeps alignment. What we've designed is all these committees that are yanking on each other, pulling each other away from the ministry. So I have my bicycle here. Actually, it's not mine. I think Mackie on your conference staff, he brought it here. So all those governing committees are steering. They do the job of steering. You okay? I'm going to do one more thing here for you. There. So you got your steering component. That's your staff parish, your trustees, all that. It sets the direction. Now, what happens is our trustees start wanting to, like fix the toilets and stuff. That doesn't need to be the trustee's job. Trustee needs to be thinking ahead on the building. Or even better, not have a separate board of trustees and have one board. But anyway, the idea is governing is steering the church. Then you have ministry teams, your worship team, your mission outreach group, your group that does evangelism. They are in charge of pedaling. Now, a bike needs both, right? If I just had a bike and there was no chain and no pedals, I could steer as long as I was going downhill. Right, get somewhere. But I'm not getting anywhere real quick. I can have a church that has lots of pedaling, lots of motion, but without the steering, am I going to get aligned? Am I going to get where God needs us to? Am I getting to the promised land? Heck no. It's going to go anywhere it happens to land. So what I've seen is, I've seen in our wonderful mainline church, we have 2 kinds of churches. We have churches where every member of the church is a member of at least 4 committees. And there is so much steering going on. And I say, well, what kind of ministry do you do in your church? Because I'm a DS and I ask those kind of questions. They say, well, I'm on staff parish and I'm on finance committee and I'm on this. And I'm like, no, I ask what ministry you do. And all they can name is administration. And I say, well, I know y'all have a nice food pantry. Do you go out help on that one? No, I'm too busy with meetings. Or we have the churches that are peddling. That's the churches with all the stuff on the calendar. But no good sense to actually cut anything. And we're going as hard as we can, but we're not steering anywhere. Now, of course, we do have more than a few churches, I suppose, that do have both, except I guess maybe along with the helmet we have blinders on. We don't actually have an alignment or a purpose and no map, and so we're not sure where we're going. But you can understand, if you have the pedaling working together with the steering and you're on a clear path, imagine the transformation your church could do. Imagine the impact for the kingdom when you put great steering and great pedaling together. That metaphor, I actually got from Dan Inwitzel at Church of Resurrection. I stole it from him shamelessly. But I've been using this for years. I have taken bicycles and pulled them into rooms so many times. The reason is I see a lot of committees that should be focused on steering. They keep on wanting to be pedaling committees. I got people on trustees. golly, they want to fix the toilets. They don't need to be fixing the toilets. They need to be on a ministry team that's in charge of that. That's their calling. Others, the folks I have steering, I need them to have experience in pedaling too. I need them to be well-rounded disciples that for a season are going to be pulled into the steering job, hopefully not giving up their other roles, pulled in the steering job for a season to help keep the church on track and aligned to the purpose God's given us. And then return to pedaling, because that's the real engine of the church. I'm going to skip past some stuff here. Okay, so we talked about alignment of plans, alignment of processes, alignment of people. On the people, I divvied it up a whole bunch of times. You know, there's staff people and governance stuff. So here's my question. Pair and share again. Now start with writing down. Just write down one sentence. What is one next step you can take to create alignment of people? That could be your teams, could be staff, could be leadership. You could say something about, I want to have staff meeting, and every time we have staff meeting, we're going to write the trajectory at the top, and we're going to say it together. That's one step. That's one good step. So write it down, turn to your neighbor, take 1 minute, and let's see what happens. And go. And switch. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, thank you so much. I hope you all are leaving with 2 steps. One's for plans and processes. 1 step is for people. Leaving here with those things that you can change right now, change this week in your church. And I hope that those lead you to greater fulfillment of your mission. Now, at Arkansas Conference, we know ours. Every one of us, golly, we have, that's telling me to do something here. You got to hear my little Charlie Brown song. So we're really clear. We're about creating vital congregations to make disciples of Jesus Christ, to make disciples equipped to transform lives, communities, and the world. I can do that in my sleep. It is a vision that makes my mouth water. That's my prayer for you, is every one of you have a God-sized impact vision, whatever it is God's put on your heart. You know it by heart. It makes your mouth water, and you're taking people toward that promised land. So that, may God bless you in that. My publisher has told me I need to do a better job at Merck and selling books, because I'm a horrible capitalist. So I am doing a book signing after this. Kay Cotan and I are going to be over at the Market Square booth. I encourage you to stop by and chat with me. I'm happy to talk with you. Everything's online. Download it. Enjoy it. Hope it's helpful. In the meantime, God be with you.